just never settle for less. It's all in your head, how you think you manifest. So get ready to rise, cause we about to be the best. Gotta switch it up, gotta break the old habits. Get your mind right, turn your dreams into habits. No negative vibes, only positive thoughts.
What is up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Mindset Cafe podcast. And this is actually a special podcast. We are running it back with AJ Cappuccitti. He was on episode 57 almost a year ago, back in November of 2023. And so now bringing him back a year later, you guys hearing this episode, it'll probably be a month to the day. It's exciting because, I mean, AJ, thank you first off for coming on today. And I've seen so much growth in the time we've known each other. You know, we've known each other a little over a year. And so I wanted to bring you back on today and really dive into what has happened in the last year with you, with your business, but then really dive into the personal development and mindset of things. So thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, man. No, I'm happy to be here. Honestly, when you dropped the link in there, I was like, oh yeah, 100%, man. Let's do it. I know we had a little scheduling thing the first time around, but I'm happy to be here, and I made sure, just kind of dialed in, no time crunch, no nothing today.
No, definitely. So how's business been going? I know the last time, for you guys that haven't checked out the episode before, it's episode 57. AJ's he started off as, high school dropout, just to give you a quick recap, so that you guys can be up to date. High school dropout, but then now serial entrepreneur. He started, construction with his grandfather, and he has leveled that up, and now he is running things. He is part of a CRM company as well out in there in Canada. And so I wanted to dive in. So what's been going on? What's happened in the last year, AJ?
Honestly, a lot's happened in the past year. We've done well. We've done a lot of like back end and internal changes within the company where we've delegated a lot more roles and responsibilities, stuff like that. So that's really been great for customer service. Then from there, I've changed up my role a little bit throughout the company where I'm kind of in a little bit more of the day-to-day operations. I had a little lapse there where I was like, oh, I'm going to step back. I'm going to let everything run itself, stuff like that. But honestly, I just stopped listening to all the noise. And I was like, I got to be in the weeds, man. I love doing what I'm doing. So that's what's changed in the construction company. And then we've had the launch of the business solutions company. So it's been an eventful year. Can't complain, can't brag, but day-to-day, it's going great.
No, that's awesome, man. So let's dive in. Like, how has your personal development and your mindset journey grown or leveled up in the past year?
I'd say about 3,000%, man. Like, honestly, it's kind of, I really did notice when I started my business three and a half years in, where it's kind of like, I just have a job and I need to change things up. I need to level myself up. And I found out that my business wasn't moving as fast as I wanted to because I personally wasn't moving and I wasn't a better person as the owner. So I dialed into like health. I completed 75 hard a few months ago. I've been sticking with my workouts. I picked up running now and I'm actually liking it at this point. So like that shows you how much I've been running. Like for you to get to the point where you're liking running, like, you run a lot. So that's a good part of it. And then personal development, I had a mind shift with where I'm at with it. And I see it with a lot of young entrepreneurs or even like seasoned entrepreneurs. You listen to all the noise. And I really picked up that mantra after the event we were at. And I came home and I hit this low and I'm like, what can I do to like better myself? Because like at first, and let's go into like the day-to-day kind of routine where you have like your friends next door, your buddies you hang out with, friends you run into, acquaintances, colleagues. And I felt like I was really like at a different level with, self-improvement, self-development. And after going to that event, putting myself in a separate room, I was like, no, you know what? I really need to step up my game. I really need to improve myself. But I was going into the stuff like, oh, I got to read more self-development books. And I got to have this morning routine nailed down to the minute and this and that. And truthfully, like I'm even working with some clients where we've adapted this and it's really working, where it's like, forget the noise. Like, do what's going to better you. Like, not everyone's a runner. Not everyone likes self-development books. I working with someone right now where they're like, AJ, I'm just so bored. I can't read these self-development books. I go read Harry Potter. You're sitting down, you're still reading. Like, enjoy the process. You know what I mean? Everyone thinks it has to be this uphill struggle, battle. Like you're gonna have your moment of pain and moment of resistance, but for the most part, you should be enjoying that personal development aspect of it. Like you're bettering yourself. So if you're stressed out, you're exhausted, you're in pain, like you're not enjoying the process and you're not going to get the best results. Like, why is it any different than the way I look at it is like, why is it any different? They say you do something you love, you're not going to work a day in your life. But then when it comes to personal development, it's like, run yourself into the trenches, put yourself in a body bag and push yourself to the limits and do this and do that. Well, why shouldn't you be enjoying that journey too? It's because all the noise out there and no one's listening, everyone's listening to it, and no one's getting better because they think they have to do this and have to do that. And no one's dialed into themselves. And I think that's the first step of personal development is what I've learned and where I've got now is that I'm enjoying the process. I'm not guilty if I miss a day at the gym because I know mentally I probably just couldn't handle it that day. So the next day when I go, I'm like, you know what? Boom, I missed yesterday. Now I'm going to double down today. And I have a better workout that way.
I mean, that's an
As a gym
interesting.
owner, you're probably hating that, but
No, I mean, honestly, everyone has their own journey, right? I mean, it's there's no right answer to it. And that's the thing is like, I know you started off with saying that you love running, or have came to love running. And believe me, like I'm a gym owner, I'm a fitness person, and I don't like running, right? Like Trevor, from the RBO, we always have the OG meetups and stuff, and I can't wait for you to, experience that. But everyone, wants to hop on board and, go run with Trevor and do these things. And I'll be the first one to tell them like, yo, I'm not waking up at, it's 1 a.m. my time. Like I'm not doing it. Like, like I will do one of the 2 days, but I'm not doing it both days. And I'm not doing it just because everyone else is doing it. And I'll go lift, I'll go do other things. Like, but you got to realize like there's no right way to do personal development, right? Like you should be trying to better yourself, whether it is running, whether it is lifting, whether it is reading. What are you not doing now that you could be doing to better yourself, right? So there's no wrong way. You don't have to do it 7 days a week. Like you don't like running, right? You don't have to run 7 days a week. If you're doing 75 hard, I get it. You doing Trevor's, I'm sure he's going for like 2,000 days now. It's if you want to do that, by all means, like that's a huge accomplishment. And my hat's off to you. But that's not for everyone, right? I'm not saying that you can't do that or you shouldn't do it. I'm just saying it's not for everyone. And so if you're comparing yourself to someone that's that high of caliber and it's not your goal to be that high of caliber, which I mean, if that's your thing, I get it, but that's fine, right? What is your goal? What are you trying to do? And how are you going to level yourself up to become that person, right? Before we hopped on this episode, we were talking about, how the meetup went and how everything went after that. And you had mentioned, everyday friends. So we'll dive into this a little bit. Everyday friends and how we compare ourselves to our surroundings and stuff. And you, like myself, we like to be around high caliber people, right? We like to be around people that are doing more than we're doing, or at least they give the feeling that we're not doing enough because it pushes us. Where for someone else, that might demotivate them because they're like, I'm never going to be like that. And again, if that's you, then that's you, right? You're never going to become that high caliber person if you have that mindset of that could never be me, right? My mindset has always been, if someone else is doing it, that means it's a reality for them. That means it could be my reality. I just need to figure out the steps to make it work. So let's dive into that, everyday friend and the comparisons of it.
Yeah, so I've learned over the past year there is different, I guess, tiers of friends, right? Like you have your colleagues that you'll run into. You might know them by name, you might not know them by name. You give them the odd, like, hey, what's up when you see them in public. Then you have your acquaintances, which you know through a friend or you bump into, or you're at mutual events together too. Then I think there's like everyday friends where it's kind of like you're good if you get a text from them, you'll take the time, you'll respond to it. Not that you shouldn't respond to text, but you know what I mean. Like you get it in, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna respond right now, kind of thing. And then you have friends. I mean, I think there's different levels of friends. Like, you have those friends that, you call them and say, hey, you want to do something Sunday? Sure, we'll do something Sunday. Then you have that friend where, you get a call at 3 a.m. and it's kind of like, okay, I'm going to go grab my shovel and boots and we're going to bury the body, right? Like, so there's that caliber of friends. But then there's like, I think there's an outer circle of friends. People you don't see every day, people don't have to run into. Like I have one that lives out on the West Coast, and I just went to his wedding. I haven't seen him in 6 years, but we've been best friends since grade 1.
Right.
But he's also a high performance person where I don't need to call him every day. I don't need to check in with him. And I feel like that you get a lot of that through networking, like unexpectedly too. It just kind of happens, right? You get that through masterminds. Like I feel like, the guys in our mastermind, it's kind of like that. I don't need to see you guys every day. I don't need to check in with you guys every day. But when we jump on a podcast, we jump on a call, like, we're diving into some deep stuff, right? Like it's
Right.
And that's where I find there's a distinguish between people. And I feel like the lower caliber friends, they're not really on the radar. You got your mid-level friends, and those are what you compare yourself to every day because that's your environment. That's your day-to-day environment and stuff. That's why I think these in-person meetups are so crucial because you have, every quarter, every, bi-yearly, even yearly, like it puts you in a different room, which kind of takes away the misleading interpretation of that you have of yourself from your day-to-day. Like I was at the point where I felt like I was performing at such a high level. I was like committed. I'm not missing anything. I'm on the ball, dialed in and everything. Then you walk into one of those rooms, it's kind of like you go from like high caliber down to like, okay, I'm average in this room. Right. And it's not like a direct comparison, but it's like I think high performing people like me and you, we look at ourselves and say, okay, well, if we're just average in this room, clearly we can be doing more to better ourselves. It's not like you want to be better than that person. Because I think that's a big mindset thing too, is when people can distinguish competition from achievement.
Right.
And I think
Not
low performing people that want to be high performing people that haven't figured it out yet are very competitive.
right. And I
And I
think
believe
I
high
still
caliber people are achievers.
yes, and I will say that high caliber people still are competitive, but in a different sense. Right? Like what I mean by that is when we surround each other, like, when you and I meet up, and let's say, and the rest of like the high level people that we meet up with, there's still that competitive nature to be moving just as fast or growing as fast or developing as fast as the next person. But it's not in the same way as when you're a low caliber person or when you're just getting into, let's say, entrepreneurship. You think everyone is competition in the sense of I can't help them, screw them, I need to be better than everyone. I'm not going to tell or help anyone, right?
Yeah.
Where once you hit the high caliber person, like we're competitive, but at the same time, if you were to call me, even if we're in the same industry, right? Me and there's another person, I've had him on the podcast before, Eric, right? We're both franchisors. And we're both competitive in like what we're doing, what we're growing. Like, hey, look, I learned this, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, it's, hey, look, like I learned this thing, we're doing this now. And then if I were to ask him or he were to ask me, how am I doing that? We would turn around and show them so that they can do those things and level up as well. Once you start to realize there's that mindset shift that you can be competitive, but at the same time, helping others and leveling up your circle levels you up as well.
Yeah. And that's what I mean by like achiever. Like we get to the point where we all want to achieve success. We all want to achieve accomplishments, right? Like a young entrepreneur, I imagine in like a foot race would say, I'm going to blow this guy out of the water and I'm going to set a new world record.
Mm-hmm.
Where I feel like high achievers, say me and you were in a foot race, we have the mindset where you're like, AG, you know what? I've never done a half marathon. And I'm like, you know what? I've never set this pace. So I'm going to be the pace keeper and I'm going to set my pace as this, but I'm going to motivate you to run the whole distance. But I need you chasing me so I keep my pace. And we both accomplish something. We both succeed. We're competing, but we're helping each other with an indirect goal.
Yes.
And I find high achievers work in that capacity rather than if me and you were to step up on the line and I turn to you and like, you know what? I'm just going to leave this guy in the dust. Screw him.
Exactly.
Like it's a different, I guess, mindset. Like even as a contractor, when I first started, I was like, I'm going to be the best contractor around. That's it. This and that. Last time I did a trade show, I asked one of my competition guys if you want to go for lunch. Hey, bro, how's everything going? Good. Yeah. We should grab lunch someday. Okay. Yeah. Sounds good. Like I think it comes with a little bit of success too, right? Because you almost prove yourself something. Think you need to go through that season at the beginning to prove something to yourself, and then it's either that's what distinguishes a high achiever and low achiever. It's kind of like if you can switch that mindset, you become the high achiever because you can accept that and say, you know what, I hit my goals, I can hit more goals, I can do this. It sucked. And truthfully, I love helping out young entrepreneurs because I remember the days like at the beginning where I had to eat shit. And sorry, can I swear on here?
Yeah, you're good.
And like I had to eat shit. And I'm like, I don't want anyone else to go through that. When my wife started her business, like I was like, I told her straight out, I'm like, anything you need for your business, like my business will help yours because I don't want you going through the pains and struggles that I went through. It sucked. Like it really sucked, especially going through it by yourself.
Yep.
And I think
No.
that's where the high achiever comes in versus the other person where they're like, screw it, I went through it, they can survive. It's like, oh, you know, like our parents are like, oh, I went to school, 2 ways uphill in the snow. It's like, you can do it too. It's like, okay, but do you have to? Like, what's the point?
Right. And I think that's the important thing too, is like as an achiever, like I like that definition of it, like achiever is you have to have the sense of humility to also ask for help, right?
Yeah.
To realize that you don't know everything and it's okay not to know everything. And once you have that self-confidence within yourself, and I think that that's where you're going with it, is like I was talking to someone else about this the other day. It's like, how does self-confidence developed? Well, it's developed not through, let's say, physical achievements, but it's through self-achievements that you've proven to yourself, no matter what, you will make it work, right? No matter what, you will succeed. And I think that's where there is a time for competition is like for me, like let's say, for example, I know without a doubt, if I want to achieve anything, like I will achieve it. Maybe it may not be today, it may not be tomorrow, but it will happen. Right. And that's what I said when I wanted to open the gym and launch a franchise and so forth. And the time for competition in my eyes is not in a way of, competing with others or anything like that. But if you doubt me or if you say I can't do something, watch. Like I love it. Like I love that, like internal, having to prove it to just prove it. Right. So if you say I can't do something, watch this,
But I think the level you're at, like you'll say, watch this, and you are consistent enough and resilient enough where people see those accomplishments. And I think those low achievers need to do the chest beating after they hit that accomplishment.
Right.
Like, congrats on your franchise that you just ended up closing there, right? Well, finalizing, right?
Oh yeah, thank you.
But it didn't. There was no chest beating about it. It's like, hey, landed a franchise, opening on this date, this and that. Finally got here, and that was it, right?
Right.
Chess beater would go out there and say, best franchise in the world, no one could beat it, best investment in the world. Like, you know what I mean? It's one of those, like, it's how it's delivered too after the achievement's done. I think that's what distinguishes people with different mindsets as well. Does that make sense?
No, yeah, definitely. I get you on that. And I think that's something also that is like, it can be a two-way street on that too, because even for high achievers, like I know both of us are, it's, we don't do that, right? Where we have to go just say, look at me, we did this, we're the best, and in that sense. But at the same time, sometimes we don't give enough credit. And I know I'm guilty of this at least, right? Where I actually didn't even post anything about the franchise the day it closed, right? And then I was like, you know what? Like my circle, you guys in our mastermind have seen me go through this. Like it took me 13 months to close the first franchise, like since the launch, right? And so it was one of those things where I posted it more of a sense of, look, not everything works out the first day. Not everything works out, in a week, in a month, and whatever. But at the same time, I also didn't even really celebrate like the win, right? Like that day I had a few people reaching out and congratulating me and stuff. And it, like, for me, it was like, oh, cool. Thank you. I appreciate it. But at the same time, I knew I wasn't done yet, and I'm still not done yet. So that's something that too, we got to be careful of, is like, you also have to celebrate those wins, because as high achievers, like we are so hard on ourselves because we move fast and because we have such big goals and we are growing so fast, personally and professionally, that sometimes we do have to take a step back and give ourselves at least a little recognition or celebrate those wins. Would you agree?
Let me spin this, and I'm going to make you the interviewee here. So, but do you think high achievers are high achievers because we don't celebrate those small wins and we keep thriving for more? Because I feel like certain people would hit that goal and it's kind of like, okay, great, I have a franchise open, kick back and start become stagnant, thinking, okay, the next one will just come in on its own. You as a high achiever, you're like, okay, I open my franchise, but what's next? I have more goals. I'm going to keep chasing them. So I don't have time to sit here and celebrate this win.
Right.
You see what I mean? Like, I
I,
think
I
that's what
do
makes a high achiever.
I do agree with you and I disagree with you. Right. And so I agree with you because we're not setting finite goals. Right. And so that's what keeps us high achievers. We're not setting goals that, the selling one franchise, let's say, wasn't my goal, and it's not my goal. Right. It was a milestone goal, but I know I'm not done yet because I'm not global yet. Right. And even when I become global, it still can get bigger and there's still more to it. And there's still more that I can do. Right. And so our goals as high achievers are never ending. Right. But at the same time, like I'm actually wearing a watch right now that Scott knows I'm a watch person, and he convinced me. He was like, you know what, I get you, and I know where you're mentally at, but you need to celebrate the small one. It doesn't need to be crazy. It doesn't need to be lavish, right? But you need something to tell your subconscious that this is what you want, so that you keep going for those, right? Because if you don't ever tell yourself that you're doing well or that you are going in the right path, when you hit those hurdles, it's that much harder to reconcile with yourself that you're doing okay, right? So there is a two-way street on that. So it's not that you need to have crazy celebrating the wins or crazy, lavish vacations because you accomplished something, but you do need to tell your subconscious that you are achieving goals, right? Because let's think all the way back to when we were kids, right? Your team, and why I say when we were kids, because nowadays everyone gets a participation trophy, right?
No.
But when we were kids, you got a trophy when you won, right? And so as a kid, that acknowledgement of you winning didn't mean that it was over, but how much harder did you push the next season to win again?
Yeah.
Right. But if there was no trophy, there was no award, there was no anything like that, then how hard would you be pushing if there was never any recognition internally that you did well?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I like the milestone kind of analogy where it's like you hit a milestone, but you didn't hit the top of the mountain. Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like, I mean, we're still on pace to, close a couple more franchises within the next few weeks. But again, for me, it's like, those are mini milestones, right? Those are things where I'll give myself a pat on the back, but like the day it hasn't ended, right? I do that. Let's say I close that deal at 8 a.m. like I did the first one. Like I still have the rest of the day. Like I still have things to do, right? I didn't text anyone. I didn't call anyone except for my business partner to let him know. And then it was like, all right, he was like, all right, cool. I was like, but what are we doing today? What's on the agenda? And he was already on that same mindset, right?
Yeah.
So but at the same time, giving that small recognition so that you are acknowledging it, so that you, again, are subconsciously always striving for that next quote unquote trophy.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I do think high achievers are consistently moving the goalposts away from them to keep hitting the next kind of, let's call it the marker, right? Or the milestone. So
Right.
no, I totally agree with you. And I do agree you should give yourself a pat on the back, but I do think a lot of, I guess, close-minded or low achievers, and I hate calling them low achievers because, they still accomplished something. You did, right?
Mm-hmm.
But, that kind of mindset, I think people become stagnant on it, right? And they hit that goal and it's kind of like, oh yeah, I did that, right? And that's where the chest beating kicks in, and it's kind of like, hey, look, I hit this goal, or this is where I'm at. It's kind of like, well, maybe it's time you kind of walk out in the hallway and walk into a different room, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you're the biggest person in the room, or the highest achiever in the room, you need to get into another room.
Yeah.
Right. It's that surrounding yourself with people that are better than you or farther than you, that helps you level up, because one, they're going to give you advice, they're going to help you out, as long as you're not that arrogant, cocky person that thinks you know it all. Like, they're going to want to help level you up. But if you stay in the room where you're the biggest person, well, guess what, you're always going to be the biggest person, because you're only surrounding yourself with lower achieving people to give yourself that pat on the back, right? To be the who's who. Even let's say Trevor, right? He's one of the higher people in our group, yet he's still a part of other masterminds.
Yeah.
And that's the perfect example of it. So I think that with high achievers, not only we don't celebrate the wins, and sometimes we don't, like I was saying, competition, there's a place for it, right? And for me, it's one of those things where it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. And that's one of those things that as a young entrepreneur, as someone, you know, that hasn't developed this mindset in life, realize that people, you could tell people your dreams and your goals and all those kind of things. I wouldn't recommend it because they're not their dreams. They don't see that as a reality, and they can discourage you from doing it. And that's a dangerous game to play, right? So realizing, even for myself, like when I was telling my clients back in the day, you know, and other trainers, I was going to open a gym and, you know, blah, blah, blah. Like they would always almost just like give me a pat on the head and be like, oh yeah, okay. You know, how many times they heard this story from someone else?
Yeah.
But in my mind, I knew the self-confidence, like, again, it would happen. It just, I didn't know if it was going to be this year, next year, you know, 5 years. It was just a matter of when. So all of a sudden you achieve that goal. And for me, it was like, we opened the gym and it wasn't like, look, I'm a gym owner now. Right. And we launched a franchise and I was like, look, I'm not like, I didn't all of a sudden announce to the world, I'm a franchisor now, you know, I'm the king in the world. Yeah. But all of a sudden I started noticing other people coming out of the woodworks and being like, oh, wow, you know, I would love to grab some lunch sometime. And it's like the same people that I was in that lower competition race that we were talking about, where I wasn't necessarily in the competitive race, but I could tell they were. Yeah. Right. Everything that we were doing, I would give them advice. I could tell that they were trying to just be better than me. And I was like, look, you're racing the race I'm not even playing, you know?
Yeah.
You know, but again, if you want to do it, go ahead and wear yourself out. But all of a sudden that switched for a lot of people once I was showing the world without having to announce it. Because again, your actions, your accomplishments, other people will see it and give you the recognition, whether you care for it or not. But then all of a sudden they come out of the woodworks and, you know, they want to bounce their ideas off and all those kind of things. And believe me, like, I'm still willing to help. I've always been that person. But it's just one of those things where you got to realize that you could tell everyone you're going to do things. You're going to tell people that you accomplished it. But if your actions and your past and your essentially your life resume doesn't speak for itself, then you're not there yet.
And I've been able to look, like, I've learned one thing about being in the entrepreneur space is, I think a lot of people, again, listening to the noise, they look at the imagery of someone. You know, what are they driving? How many employees they have? How many this? How many that? Like, I find myself less and less looking at people I don't know, rather than looking at people I've got to know. Like you, for instance, over a year span, like, you know, you had your gym and then you had your podcast. I was newer at the time. Now you're what, 150 in, and I was on 57, right? So,
yeah,
you know, it's you've been consistent with it over time, right? You said you're going to start a franchise, and you've opened a franchise. Like those small deposits throughout the day, I'm more likely to look up to someone like you rather than someone I find on Instagram or Facebook or any of the social media platforms, and rely on their advice. Sure,
right.
they're there, but let's be honest. You could pay to be there. You really could pay to be there, right?
Oh, 100%.
But someone with actual deposits in the bank, I'm like, okay, you know what? This guy's, he's gone through the ringer himself. If I'm going to ask someone for advice, it's going to be this guy because he's been in my shoes, right?
Exactly. And I think that's where people have to get kind of cautious, especially with social media, is like flashy doesn't always mean successful, right? Where granted, I mean, that can be the case for people that like flashy things. Me personally, I'm not a flashy person. My favorite shoes are Vans, right? Like, I don't care at what level of success I get to, I will always wear Vans. Like, I just love them. So it's like when people establish, you know, themselves a little bit, and especially, let's say, social media, and you're looking up to people and you're looking because they have this kind of car or that kind of watch or whatever, it's like, is that theirs? Is it rented? You don't know, because again, it's a perception. Social media is a perception, right? So it's like, you got to be careful on those things and surround yourselves with people that are actually doing things and that you come to know, right? Like, I've come to know you as a person, right? I know I can go to you for advice, life advice, business advice, and we may not be in the same industry, but again, I know the kind of person that you are and the deposits and the growth that you've had in your business. And whether we're at the same level, different levels, you're higher, I'm higher, I know that your advice will come with a lot more weight than someone that I just find randomly.
Yeah. And I think that comes with time put in. I mean, like, I still have friends that, you know, we'll talk about, they're like, oh, you're hanging out with the guy that makes $1 million a year. And I'm like, but I didn't walk into a space knowing someone $1 million a year. Like, it started out, you know, watching, you know, a documentary, and then it started out starting my own business. And it's kind of like, learning how to network with people, and then finding out about masterminds, getting into one mastermind, two masterminds, three masterminds, until I found somewhere I fit. And then from there, it snowballed to developing relationships. You know what I mean? But like
Exactly.
the first mastermind I was in, I didn't even drop a comment or a post or anything in any of the groups. I was just kind of quiet, sitting in the background, right? And then as you see more success or start to accomplish more personally, you start to speak up more. And then from there, you find, say, another mastermind where, and I'm just using mastermind as an example because we're both in them, right? But
Mhm.
then, you get in another one and you become more outspoken and you start, networking with people and becoming friends with them and, building relationships with them. And then slowly you get into those rooms. And again, it's changing rooms every so often where you need to move into another room, right? But also on the flip side, I don't know if you feel like this. I feel like it's great moving into different rooms and not being the biggest fish in the pond. But I feel like we do have a responsibility sometimes to take a step back and step into a smaller room and kind of give back a little bit.
No, 100%. And I think that there's a time and there's a place for it, right? And if you're only doing that, like, cause like we're setting ourselves in a way where we're surrounding ourselves with, high achieving people, right? Whether again they're at the same level, they're a little below us, whatever. Like it's the people that we're surrounding ourselves with. So even if you're joining a group that has lower level status people, meaning that they're just not as far as you in business or whatever, but they're still high achieving people, right? They still have that same quality, those same, features and all those kind of things intrinsically within them. It's 100% there. But if you're just surrounding yourself with lower level people just to make yourself feel like you're an established authority figure, then that's where the issue can kind of come, right? Because now you're doing it for the self credit and the self acknowledgement, just to have it, to say I'm better than you, versus genuinely stepping in a room to help people that genuinely want to learn and better themselves, right?
That's what I was getting at. Is like I feel like once you hit a certain level, your mind shift changes, and then from there you kind of roll into the whole like, okay, well, I wished someone answered DM when I was a little bit lower down. So let me step into this room, be that person, because if I can help one person save, $1,000 or a week of their time, or like pivot them off the wrong path. Like, I was just on a call with a guy and he's like, hey, you know what? I'm going to hire a sales rep. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. And I'm going to, who's going to manage them all? Well, I am. I'm like, okay, but you just said you're too busy on the field. Well, no, like I'm just too busy to get back to the emails. I'm like, okay, if you're too busy right now to get back to the emails, hire some support staff first
Right.
and then bring in more work. Because what you're going to do is you're going to bring in all this work with this new sales rep, and then you're going to eat, you're going to eat shit on it and fail and have bad client experiences because you brought in too much work before you can handle the workload and onboard them properly. So no one's going to sign a contract or drop a review if their onboarding or their service is horrible.
Right.
Maybe it's better you bring in some support staff, so when that influx of work comes in, then you can manage that. And
Exactly.
you could be hands-on, making sure the product or service is delivered while your support staff manages your clients. And then, you know what, if you can keep pace, hire someone to help you and then bring in the sales rep. But that was a 20-minute conversation. He reached back out to me. He's like, yeah, I hired support staff. I never knew I needed it. Like literally, like 2 days
Right.
later, he had someone, followed up with me like 3 days later, I hired someone. I'm like, already? He's like, 1 day it's changed my life. Like one
Yep.
day. And I'm like, now imagine you brought in a sales rep and had that train wreck, right? I'm sure you know what it's like, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I can have a 15-minute phone call and step back into a different room and help someone out with that, like that could save their whole business. You know what I mean? It took what, 15, 20 minutes?
Exactly. And I
I wish
think
I
that
had someone to do that sometimes. Like,
no, 100%. And I mean, that's, I think, why I got frustrated the one time. Like, 'cause, I mean, I don't have just hours in the day where I'm just twiddling my thumbs, right?
yeah,
And so, like, when I, or when some of the other people, and even our mastermind that we're the same one in, when we give the opportunity to connect with other people, let's say in the inner circle, or with, you know that there's people in there that are just starting out their businesses, and then people aren't taking advantage of it. It's like, look, I'm doing this because I want to help. I'm not doing it because I have all this time in the world and I think that I know more than you. It's just because I want to help you. Like, how can I help you? Like, let's have a 20-minute call. Let's have a 10-minute call, whatever you need. So I've had some awesome calls with people, but at the same time, like I posted it one time where no one even booked anything. And I was like, damn, there's 130 people in here and none of you guys are taking up. And it was like me and someone else that had posted and no one booked with either of us. And I was like, you guys are having the wrong mindset about this. I was in masterminds before. I did the same thing. And where I was like you, I was in the back. I didn't do anything. I didn't say anything. But then I also realized that group wasn't for me. Everyone was kind of comparing themselves to each other, flashy watches, all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, it kind of lost me on some of the talks that they were having, like how to find friends. And I was like, and everyone was like super engaged. And I was like, are you guys serious right now? Like, you guys don't know how to get a friend? Like, what? So then I was like, this ain't my group. Yeah. So, it's like, I get it. But at the same time, you're not going to get the value out of a group or a community unless you contribute something to it, right? Yeah. You post your advice, you post something, and it may not resonate with everyone. But if it resonates with one person or one person needed to hear that advice, then that's all you do it for, right?
It's a catalog of information. Like podcasts, for instance. You know how many times I scroll back to someone's podcast from a year ago and re-listen to it? Because it might not resonate with you at that time, but down the road it can. It's just same thing as the Facebook groups and everything. Like, if someone needs something, especially with RBO, right? Like, you go in that group and you just search keywords, you're going to find so much information that's going to resonate with you right now. Like, but that's the mindset of people with the immediate, like, gratification. They're like, oh, there's nothing in this group for me. It's like, well, were you really resourceful? Did you really dive deep? Did you really reach out? Do you connect with people? Did you hit Devin's link, to jump on a call? Like, no, you didn't, right? And I find that's where, like, people want to hand it to them and not playing the old man, oh, these kids nowadays. No, it's not like that, but it is with young entrepreneurs where they're like, they got a problem, they got to solve this problem right now. It's like, well, it doesn't work like that. You know what I mean? The problem you have today is probably not even a problem you should have. That's what I'm finding with a lot of people or a lot of entrepreneurs. I don't know if you're noticing that, but especially moving into like the business solutions kind of sector, we've adopted a new kind of motto where, like, we mentor people, because I'm finding people aren't even aligned with themselves and they're trying to solve problems that they shouldn't even be having. I'm like, why do you have this as a problem? Like, well, I can't hire 6 people. Can you manage 6 people? Can you handle 6 people? Do you have enough work for 6 people? Like, why are we talking about this problem? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I had a client who told me they were actually, I'm working actually just with them pro bono, just as a friend, and they're like, my life's a mess. I'm like, well, what do you mean? Oh, I want to be like you. And I'm like, what do you mean like me? It seems like you have it all together. I go, one, I don't have it all together. I mean, it might look like it, but every day is a struggle. But what's a mess? He's like, well, I walk in my house and I have laundry everywhere. Like, put away your effing laundry. Literally, they folded their laundry. I got a message saying they felt great. Like, oh my God, what a difference. And I'm like, that's where we start.
Yeah.
Don't come to me with these problems about hiring 25 people and doing this and doing that. And I want to make $1 million. Like, just put away your laundry. Like, yep. That's it. And it's so small. Like, I know we kind of sidetracked there, but
no, but it is so true though. Cause I mean, I think because this is like the second person that you like mentioned something like this, right? And it's like, even in my industry as well. And I've had calls like this as well with people where it's like, they see the amount of staff I have, or let's say that you have, or other people have, and they think that they need to just get to that number and then their business will work. Or they think they need to hire someone to teach them essentially how to do an aspect of their business that they feel inadequate about. But in reality, like, you just need to take the next step, right? Hiring the support person. Let's solve that problem, right? Let's solve the first problem first, and then we'll move on. You grow to these levels, right? It's not, you don't get to skip and hop and jump to levels necessarily. So I think it's that mindset of, I want to be here now, or I want to be there now, versus realizing like the first cost is time, right? You're only seeing the tip of the iceberg. You're not seeing the past 10 years I was a personal trainer, right? You're not seeing the last 3 years my gym has been open before the franchise sale, right? Like, it's not, there's levels to this, and there's time that has been spent in this.
Honestly, and like, I'm going to sell shirts that literally say forget the noise, because I think that's what it is. It's like there's too much noise out there. People are brainwashed. People are following the wrong people too quickly. Like if you're a young entrepreneur, you should be following someone with 1,000 to 5,000 followers. That's the
Yep.
entrepreneur you should be following. Don't follow the
Yep.
guy with 100,000, even 1,000,000 followers. Like don't follow that guy. Don't follow that girl. Literally follow the person with 1,000 to 5,000 followers. You're gonna
Mhm.
learn a lot more from their noise than you are someone way above.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say like the people that are sub 10,000 for sure, especially the ones that are doing like consistent posts and they're trying, like you're going to learn a lot more raw information versus like the flashy, what gets clicks, what gets likes, what gets views. And you'll definitely learn a lot more. I agree with that 100%. Right. It's just, we get wrapped up in that and we get wrapped up in the noise, and they have 100,000 followers or 1,000,000 followers, so they must know what they're talking about. Not necessarily, right?
No, they're
So
talking about, but they're at a point where they're a high achiever and they're working. They're talking about what works for them, and that again,
right.
that go back to it. That's the noise. So people are like, got to get up at 4 a.m. I got to drink my water. I got to do this. I got to do that. Bro, if you haven't had a glass of water in 3 weeks and you're gonna move into drinking a gallon a day, it's not gonna happen. I hate to be that guy. Like it's not gonna happen,
Yep.
right? How do you worry about like having a glass when you wake up and having a glass before bed? I know it
Yeah.
should be more than that, but you're not drinking any water. Like I was working with someone, and honestly, the only reason I keep saying that is because I've learned so much working with people one on one lately, like how much noise is out there. They were telling me how they don't really have any system in their business, and that's an issue why they reached out. Right? I don't have any time blocking done. I don't have any of this. I didn't have any of that. So we dove into their business, and then I took a step back, and I'm like, and this is going to be an eye opener. It's kind of like I took a step back, and I'm like, okay, you want to work out time blocking? What do you time block for your personal life? Nothing. You know what? This week, I'm gonna check in with you in a week. Eat lunch every day in the same 1 hour window. I
Yep.
checked in with them. They're like, I missed 3 out of 5 days. And I'm like, if you can't have lunch for yourself, but you want to time block a whole company, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, dial into that. And slowly we worked together, and they got like the lunch the same time. They got working out at the same time, and now it's transitioning to their business, right? But again, they time blocked 5 a.m. until 8 p.m. And they're like, I gotta stick to the schedule every day, all day. I'm like, well, if you can't even have lunch at the same time, why are you putting 20 other things on your plate, right?
Yeah. And I
But now
would,
it's helping them. But it's that mentality where it's like, oh, time blocking's a thing. Let me time block my whole day. Let me time block 2 hours and try to stick with it. Because I know as
yeah.
an entrepreneur, it doesn't work all the time, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would say even like, because even for me, I would say like I couldn't time block lunch the same time every day, right? It wouldn't work for me, right? But I also say, let's say going into drinking a gallon a day, like my business partner will carry around one of those gallon jugs and he'll finish the gallon in the day. And honestly, that dude is a fish. Like he'll drink like a gallon and a half. But I know for me, if I'm carrying around that gallon, like I don't drink it as much. But I know for myself, if I carry like I have a half gallon, water bottle thing here, if I finish this by halfway through the day and refill it up, or even if I do those like 1 liter water bottles, I can finish that easier and refill it up and do it 3 times, 4 times and hit my gallon. But for me, it's just the aspect of being able to see it finished once versus it just seems like it's never finishing. For lunch, like I'll schedule my lunch. It may be at different times, but again, like I'll schedule it where I know I'm going to have it that day and then I don't stray from that. Right. So it's like if you're going to do something, it may work for one person, it may not work for another one. You just have to find it the way it works for you. So if time blocking works for you, that's awesome. Time blocking may work just in a different fashion for someone else. Like time block your lunches out and stick to them. If it's 11 a.m. right today and it's 2 p.m. tomorrow because of your schedule, how you've already set it, that's fine. But at 2 p.m. tomorrow, eat that shit. And then at 1 p.m. the next day is when you said you were going to eat lunch, eat it at 1 p.m. I don't care what else comes up in the day. You schedule it then, you eat it then, just like any other appointment, right? So,
and that's what I was getting at. It's like just being able to accomplish those small goals and the small wins goes back to like your franchise when you were saying it was a milestone. You know what I mean? Like you don't have to have lunch at 12 p.m. every day. You can have at 1, 2, even 3 o'clock if you're a late starter, then at 11 o'clock another day, but hit that small milestone. Don't worry about this like high end like goal you have to do where, like working around lunch every day at a different time might work for you. just like the water in small increments works for you. Then your business partner has a 1 liter or the 1 gallon jug, and they're good drinking that every day. But guess what? At the end of the day, you guys are both drinking a gallon of water.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
But that's the noise, right? They see your business partner walking around with this jug. They go out and they buy this big jug and they're like, oh, I'm going to drink all this water. The same water's been in there 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you're listening to the noise and you're not doing it the way you need to do it. Like, be honest with yourself.
Exactly. You just got to find what works for you. So before we wrap up, though, I know we had this mention, a year ago, but I want to see if it has changed, right? So normally you get, thrown into this. So since it's kind of coming, your legacy wall, right? Hypothetically, everything that you've posted, your social media accounts, everything you've created is hypothetically gone. On your legacy wall, what would be your one message that you've learned thus far, right? For new entrepreneurs, for, young men, for, younger people in life to take away?
Don't get comfortable with the word impossible.
Okay. Explain.
I find too many people use that's impossible as, I guess, an excuse not to accomplish something. Because if you shoot for the stars, you're going to hit the moon.
Right.
So if you set a goal that's impossible, you're going to get a lot further than if you set something that's possible. So there's so many things out there, so many achievements, so many innovations in the world and everything that people said 100 years ago, 50 years ago, 20 years ago, like that's impossible. You know what I mean?
Right.
Talking to computers. I was literally driving home today and I was talking to AI on my phone making notes. Who would have thought 20 years ago you're going to be sitting there talking to your phone to make notes, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Back 50 or 100 years before that, they're like, we're going to have to walk or ride a horse everywhere we go, and a car was made. Like, but, that would be impossible to the average person. So don't be average and don't think impossible is impossible. Like, do not become complacent with the word impossible. Like, use it as motivation, set it as a goal, and I guarantee you're going to hit a lot further than if you set that goal to the word possible.
100%. I mean, possible is the core root word in that. If you break it up, it's impossible, right? So it's your goals. Yeah. If you set that as the goal is possible, right? So it's a scapegoat to not even try, so that you don't set yourself up for the disappointment if you don't achieve it the first time, right? But it doesn't mean you can't achieve it. It just means that maybe it won't happen the first time, second time, maybe even the 100th time. But again, it can happen. You just got to find the way. But that's awesome, man. Well, AJ, thank you so much for taking the time out to, hop on a round 2, and we ran it back. And, honestly, this episode was awesome. And I always love talking with you and connecting with you. And so, guys, if you guys listen to this episode, make sure you guys share it with a friend. Leave us that 5-star review. AJ, it's always a pleasure, brother.
All right, man. Thanks again for having me on. See you next year.
Of course.
No negative vibes, only positive thoughts. Cause in the game of life, mindset calls the shots. Got my mind on the prize, I can't be distracted. I stay on my grind, no time to be slacking. I hustle hard, I go against the